Our lead story of the day is regarding the state of California is one step closer to implementing reparations. This one's insane. We're going to break it down for you, folks. Before we jump into anything, though, support a true American patriot by hitting that like and subscribe button. Leave us a short, sweet comment down below. The question of the day for the comment section is this: are you in favor of reparations? And if so, what type of reparations? And if you're not for reparations, let us know why. We would love to hear from you. Well, California's Reparations Task Force voted in favor of multiple recommendations, not just one, multiple, Saturday night, that could cut a minimum of, get this, you're sitting down, folks, a minimum of $360,000 in checks to eligible Black residents. That's a minimum. We've heard stories in the past regarding this task force approving millions of dollars in checks per each eligible Black resident. Now, why is it just strictly Black residents? I have no idea. There's many races that were involved in slavery, of being slaves themselves, but we're just limiting it again to Black residents. Well, the 9-member committee gave final approval at a meeting in Oakland to a hefty list of proposals aimed at rectifying racial inequalities across the state. Well, reparations are not only morally justifiable, but they have the potential to address long-standing racial disparities and inequalities. This came from Representative Barbara Lee, Democrat of California, said during the meeting. Well, I would also like to point out that one of the proposals that we've covered here was giving eligible Black residents the eligibility to buy a home, a multi-million-dollar home, for $1. Again, for $1. Furthermore, you have to love the fact that in their phrase, in their quote themselves, they said, but they have the potential to address long-standing racial disparities. No actual proof, by the way, but it has the potential. See, the potential is enough to spend $800 billion, which is what this is going to cost. Yes, you heard me correctly, $800 billion minimum, which blows our budget out of the water. Almost $1 trillion is really what it's going to be to do something like this without any proof that it's actually going to fix anything. It's insane. It's literally insane. You also got to add in there this whole idea of rectifying racial inequalities, but the fact that it's morally justifiable. Morally justifiable for whom? I didn't have any slaves. Furthermore, those that are living today weren't slaves either. So you're making those that are living today pay for the injustices of those in the past. And furthermore, you want to get into morally justifiable? Check this out. Just hear me out on this one. You could potentially have the situation in terms of a Black resident receiving reparations because they're Black, and somehow they were linked to slavery at one point, but also their family members were slaveholders at one point as well. So what do you do in that scenario? Are they eligible for it? And that person that was once a slave owner, the people that are still in California today that were slaves of the slaveholder that was also Black, could also receive reparations. Wrap your head around that one. The panel's first vote approved a detailed account of historical discrimination against Black Californians in areas such as voting, housing, education, disproportionate policing, and incarceration, and others. So it's about racism. It's not about slavery. It was about injustices in the past, but they're going to count that towards reparations. California was not a slave state, folks. So somehow we're paying for the injustice of slavery by somehow absorbing that with the idea of voting, housing, education, disproportionate policing, and incarceration, and other things. The group recommended that the state create a new agency that could provide services to descendants of enslaved people to calculate what the state owes them. I don't know how that calculation happens. The amount of variables that goes into this is insane. Many of you know I teach mathematics. I don't know. Trust me, I've thought about it. I don't know how you come up with a formula and an equation and be able to figure out the deviation that you would have had in terms of per Black resident that was a lineage or was an ancestor of a slave. Because that could deviate in so many different directions on so many different things. How do you get to it? I don't know. I really don't know. Though the task force didn't specify what compensation would look like, of course they didn't, because they love just shouting things out there. Democrats just love shouting things, and we'll figure it on the back end. It approved a section of the draft report stating reparations should include cash or its equivalent. You want a house? You want a brand new vehicle? We'll take care of you, folks, on a taxpayer dollar. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. So earlier iterations of the reparations package suggested paying out $360,000 to each eligible Black Californian. Some economists estimate that the project could cost the state upwards of $8 billion. Now, that is more than 2.5 times our annual budget, folks. But the Democrats don't care. They love spending money. Look at Joe Biden's handing out stimulus checks like they're hotcakes. That didn't have any effect on the economy whatsoever. The final figure is yet to be determined. It's yet to be determined because that's a lowball number. It's going to be in the $1 trillion range. The state would calculate the total per individual based on numerous factors, including whether they or a family member was incarcerated, whether they faced housing discrimination or other prejudicial factors. You got folks. It's not about slavery. That's the thing. It's about the injustices in totality of the past and having those that didn't commit those injustices today pay for the injustices of those of the past. That is morally wrong. We didn't do anything. That's literally stealing. It's actual theft. And I would also point out, this is the thing that isn't talked about at all. And it's regardless of race, by the way. Regardless of race. If it takes you multiple generations to fork your family tree, you're doing something really, really wrong here in the United States. You are doing something really, really wrong. People go, well, you're a white person. That's racist or discriminatory or bigotry. You don't understand what they live through and all these other things. As somebody that was an accountant, I'm not saying that's an authoritative viewpoint, but just in terms of having a basic understanding of personal finance and teaching personal finance, it does not take multiple generations to fork your family tree. It takes sacrifice. It takes a hell of a lot of sacrifice to fork your family tree, but you don't need a lot of money. You do not need six figures. You do not need to be a millionaire to invest your money wisely in a 401k, 403b, or whatever option you have by going to Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab, all these institutions, and investing your money through a long period of time and capitalizing on that compound interest. But they don't, somehow it's the white man's fault. It's the system's fault. The system's holding me down. No, it's just you're not making the right decisions and a sequence of good decisions in order to get there. Again, you can make $50,000 or less and still become a millionaire by the time you retire if you just invested appropriately. But people want to finance cars. They want to take out credit cards. And by the way, you don't have to live in the state of California if you can't afford a home. You can always move. That's a conversation the left don't always want to talk about, is that you can literally just get up and actually move to another state. I'm not saying it's easy. None of this is saying it's easy, but people always want the easy way out. If you can't afford the home in California, what should you probably do? You should probably go move somewhere where you can afford it, that's financially responsible, so that you can have a good retirement and your children can grow up having, I don't know, a lump sum of money or a nice asset like a household or whatever it may be that can be passed down to them. But again, it's always easier to say, hey, you know what? The injustice of the past should be paid for by today by somebody else. It's always put on somebody else to pay for something else. That's Democrat thinking for you, folks. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Again, are you for reparations? Are you not for reparations? Give us a detailed account in the comment section. We'd love to read it. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.